Yo, what's going on, all you WBE fans? It's your boy AA on Twitter 20, bringing you guys week 9 of the playoff picture for this season of the WBE. Now, this week we had a lot of changes to the standings. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and if you do, make sure to leave a like down below and tell me your thoughts on your favorite team and how they're doing for playoffs. If you think that they'll make playoffs, when you think they'll make playoffs, etc., etc. You guys know the drill. You've seen a week of this already. So without further ado, let's just jump right into this. So this week, in terms of the playoff standings, there's actually a lot that has changed compared to last week. For example, we actually at the moment have two teams that are both on the border of clinching playoffs. If we look at the current standings, most of the teams, unlike last week, had actually played their games for the current week that we're on, with just a couple games that are missing here and there. But for the most part, everyone has been on top of the games for this set of weeks, so good job to everyone on that, of course, and I get that life comes up for those who aren't, but I'm sure that they'll be caught up nonetheless in the future. So, for the upcoming games, we have two coaches who, by next week, could have clinched playoffs. Now, it is pretty safe to say, knowing who these coaches are, being MV and Gator, coaches of the San Diego Chargers and the Florida Gators, respectively, that they will probably clinch playoffs by this point. But by next week, they will officially have enough wins to where no coach can possibly, in the seeds below playoffs, pass them in terms of a amount of losses rate to get into playoffs. Like, let's say right now, currently at the 9th seed, or at the 8th seed, actually, my bad, we have Aaron Cybertron Zhang, who's currently 4-5, and Fanatax, who is currently 3-5. So both of them are X and 5 coaches. With the last 4 weeks, technically, both MV and Gator could lose 4 games to where they wouldn't make playoffs, and they could always technically win out. And if they had a better differential, they might make it in. Now, MV and Gator's differential is so good to where they will probably have better differential anyway, but in general, they're pretty close, if not already clinched playoffs by now. By next week, they will certainly make playoffs if they win this coming week, which is why for the current match of the week, I actually decided to feature both of their games, because I figured that it made a lot of sense to possibly go into their matchups. Now, before I want to get into those matchups, I do want to go over the rest of the standings for playoffs. So currently, Under the Radar has a 7-2 record. He is the 3rd seed overall right now. And he is, again, really, really close to making playoffs. Just needs another win or two, maybe even just another win and a couple of people to lose this week that could really push him into playoffs for a confirmed locked spot. Though, again, knowing Under the Radar, he has a very, very high chance of making playoffs. Same as a coach like Leo, aka 6-Foot Hacks. Very, very close to playoffs. Just needs another win or two and a couple coaches to maybe lose, or even just him winning a couple more games to put him into playoffs confirmed. So these 4 coaches, I would say, while it is not confirmed for any of them technically, they are all pretty likely candidates for playoffs with the way things are going. The middle row coaches currently, I think that a lot could change in this row coaches for not only who stays in this row, for who stays in contention, for who can maybe get replaced by some people in the bottom row right now, because at this moment, it is currently, in my opinion, anyone's game to make playoffs. Now, it seems like, as I mentioned last week, I didn't think that Kyle was technically out of playoffs, and him winning this week, in my opinion, only solidifies that, but it still is extremely unlikely that he will make playoffs. Maybe if he wins the next 4 weeks, crazy differential, something can happen, but I highly doubt it with how everyone else is doing at the moment. And that's nothing like at Kyle or anything. I think that just teams have too many wins at this point to where technically he would need Luke and Elliott to lose out the rest of their seasons, on top of a lot of coaches above him currently in the bottom row, or just even out of playoffs in general, to also be doing really poorly. And it seems so unlikely that I'm going to say that in terms of a statistical odds, I don't know the exact numbers, and I mean, maybe there's like a 0.1% chance that Kyle could make it, but for all logical reasons, Kyle is in my mind, I would say Kyle is eliminated from playoffs. I would also say that by now, Nate and Tup are practically eliminated, but again, I'm sure that there are scenarios where they can make it, where they do have chances of making playoffs, but for all practical reasons, I would say that they are most likely out of playoffs. Within another game or two, it will probably be solidified, but the 3 of them, I'd say, are pretty close to out of playoffs, if not locked out of playoffs. Now, things start to really heat up between Galactic Elliott, coach of Chicago Cubs Shoes, and Joder, coach of the Seattle Sea Kings, as these coaches are all pretty in contention, in my opinion. I'd say these coaches are pretty likely to take up those last 3 seeds. Not to say that Tup and Nate can't make seeds, and that Kyle maybe doesn't have that 0.1% chance to make playoffs that I'm just unaware of, but these 7 teams are the teams to watch out for those last 3 seeds, in my opinion, as Jodor, Feint, and also Uzi Gunner all have 3 wins right now, and they're within 1 win of actually possibly just overtaking Patty. If maybe Patty loses his week 9 game to Feint attacks, then Feint can maybe just have enough differential to pass him, or even just make sure that Aaron is not passing. So they could always just interchange those 3 spots very freely based on the Patty Feint game for week 9. And then not only that, but based on Uzi Gunner's recent wins since he did take over, I have a lot of faith that Uzi could also maybe bump into that playoff spot. He's been having a real hot streak since joining, and I have full faith in Uzi's capabilities. Not only that, but Jodor as well has been doing really well recently, and I think that he's more than capable of getting himself into playoffs. So those teams, as I mentioned, are definitely the teams to watch out for. Though that's not to say that you should count out anyone as of right now. As I said, I don't think that technically anyone is eliminated. I just mentioned it probably based off the records, that it's a lot more unlikely for Nate and Tup to make playoffs, and I'm almost certain that Kyle is eliminated. With another loss, I'm dead certain that Kyle is eliminated, but it just depends. It also, I guess, would depend on if Kyle loses and Patty/Luke both win their next games, and including this week and last week, or for Luke, I guess, just last week or this week, then Kyle would for certain be eliminated because he couldn't get 6 wins. So, as I said, for practical reasons, Kyle would be out. But who knows? Maybe like that 0.1% scenario happens. So in terms of the matchups, as I mentioned, I want to cover 2 matchups this week, being MV, coach of the San Diego Chargers, and Gator, coach of the Florida Gators. First up, we're going to get into Gators matchup, coach of the Florida Gators, and he's taking on Tup, coach of the Pittsburgh Piratas. So this is one of the reasons that I mentioned that Tup has a lot less likely playoff odds than most coaches, because not only is he behind a game already, which means that he has 1 less win than some of the coaches, whereas he could technically be 3-6 if he does get that game up and he does beat Luke. But for right now, he has 2 wins. That is what he has as of recording this video, 2 wins. And Gator is currently 1 win away from certainly locked in playoffs. Gator has been having a hot streak since his week 1 loss to Patty, coach of the Sin City Scissors, and his team is pretty terrifying. It does have a very bad ground weakness, I'll give it that, but outside of the ground weakness, his team is actually really scary. He has Mega Heracross, which is a really good Mega, especially for its tier. He has Zera Aura and Heatran, which are both very good mods, especially Zera Aura. For a tier 2 slot, I think that was a steal personally. And in terms of the matchup versus Tup, some of Tup's notable mods, he obviously does have the Zardex and the T-Tar. Zardex and T-Tar are both really scary, as Zardex in general is really nice against a lot of this team, with just dual stab and Earthquake being very, very hard for Gator's team to actually switch in on. And T-Tar in general is really nice rocker. It's pretty free to get rocks up versus Gator's team, in my opinion, because it does handle a lot of Gator's rockers and in general leads. Things such as Archaeops and Heatran could definitely be muscle passed by T-Tar. And even Celebi, of course, can always be Pursuit Trapped, which would actually be very helpful if Celebi did get Pursuit Trapped, because that does open up the door a lot for Hariyama. And I think that Hariyama actually also is a really scary matchup for Gator, because in general, Gator's team is also really fighting weak, with his resist being Celebi, Heracross, and he has an immunity in Frostlass. And I believe that is it. Everything else should be neutral, if I'm not mistaken. Which does actually mean that Gator in general would have a hard time switching in on a Guts Hariyama. And even then, Celebi wouldn't necessarily switch in, because if, let's say, Celebi did get a prediction wrong and Tup did go for the knockoff, then Gator is definitely losing his Celebi to a Guts knockoff from Hariyama. Now, Heracross could maybe defensively be invested to take on Hariyama, and obviously it has 185 attack. It's going to nuke Hariyama with anything it clicks. So that is definitely Gator's saving grace, in my opinion, in this matchup. However, as mentioned last week, I don't want to reveal everything that coaches could do. I do want to leave some stuff up to speculation, some stuff to the fans. But in my opinion, I would argue that Tup does have the matchup, but Gator is proven so consistent that I think that he could maybe pull through. He does have some stuff up his sleeve, possibly in this matchup. Things like Zera Aura can do a lot to Tup's team, especially like a mix set, or even just a bulk up Zera Aura could do a lot here. Not only that, but Heracross as well is very, very hard for Tup to switch in on. Even things like Gliscor will take a fair amount of damage from Heracross for a quote-unquote switch-in. So I think that equally both of these fighting types of this game will be putting each other's teams through the ringer. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm looking forward to watching this game. I think you guys all should be too. As, who knows, this could totally shape up how playoffs could be going forward. So make sure to stay tuned for this one. Now next up, we have MV, coach of the San Diego Chargers, and he is taking on Game Boy Luke this week, coach of the Bristol City Blazekins. Now, this is a game that could also be very terrifying. Sorry, it says on here 5-4. Luke is actually 5-3. That was a mistake on this layout. In terms of the matchup, Envy has a couple of really good threats this game, such as Azu. Azumarill against Luke's team is actually very, very terrifying. And not only that, but Ditto is, of course, always a great mon. It's always great just to trap. Well, not trap, but it's always great to come in and set up mons and just go through teams when maybe your opponent is expecting to sweep you. The Victini is obviously a nightmare to switch on, especially in this format where you are so limited in what you could draft. And Luke's team is no exception to getting swept by Victini, as in general, fire is very, very spammable against Luke. And while Luke does have dual waters plus Drampa as a dragon, in general, those mons don't like switching on Victini either, because Drampa is not going to like taking a Zen Headbutt, especially from like a banded Victini. And not only that, but Primarina can obviously get Bolt Strike, same as Tentacruel. So pretty much a dual stab plus Bolt Strike plus U-turn set could be extremely nightmarish for Luke to have to play against. But on the flip side, Envy's team also really does not like taking on Lando I, because Lando I in general, this matchup is actually very hard for Envy to switch it on. And while you might say to yourself, you know, obviously Envy does have ground switch-ins through things such as the Mega Sceptile, for example, could definitely take a ground hit, and Togekiss is obviously immune. But at the same time, those mons don't like taking on Sludge Wave. And while Lando I, without Sheer Force, isn't as good specially, it still does have a really good move pool, and still does have like 115 special attack, which is nothing to mess around with. So Luke could obviously make that work in his favor. He does have some ways to get around some of Envy's faster ones through things like Priority, Bullet Punch, and Mega Scizor, which will hit pretty hard versus a lot of Envy's team. Not only that, but in terms of helping with the Azu matchup, Luke does have some nice techs, such as maybe like a Scarf Delmise or a Colbur Delmise could definitely get around Belly Drum Azu, especially the Scarf one, because you could actually outpace Azu, at least an Adamant one, which is really nice. In fact, you could actually outpace Jolly as well, but you of course do have less offense to do that way, or at the bare minimum less bulk in general, which you do want with that sort of spread in case of Aqua Jet. Of course, if maybe a lot of chip happens on Delmise, that could make the difference, obviously. And again, that's just speculating at this point, but Scarf Delmise could definitely help with the Azu matchup. If I had to say who I'd give the matchup to, I honestly don't know. This is a pretty weird matchup just in general. It's going to come down to who can get their offense off first, in my opinion, as neither team really has that good defense, though Envy's team at least has decent defense. But it's not necessarily that good in this matchup, because Scizor could definitely get around both the Togekiss and the Registeel pretty easily, in my opinion. So in terms of viable defenses matchup, I would argue neither team has any. So it's going to come down to whoever can get their offense off first, and it'll be interesting to see. In my opinion, this is also a game you guys should definitely watch this week. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like down below. Thank you guys for watching as always, and I will see you guys in the next week of Playoff Picture. Until then, peace out, guys.